This is the guts of an IET Labs model RS-201W precision resistance decade box. On the front, it's fairly typical for any resistance decade box. It's just a pair of binding posts and, in this case, a bunch of thumb wheel switches. Because this particular unit, it's a little thumb wheel switch that connects various resistors in series or in parallel, as opposed to more typical, relatively speaking, consumer grade box like this, which is a circa 1989 domestically made Ohmite. This has a bunch of switches that either bypass or wire in series with the two output posts a resistor of the given rating on the front scale, anywhere from 1 ohm to 4 million ohms. And each resistor in this is mounted to one of a series of printed circuit boards, which, if you're to tear this down a lot farther, which I'm not going to do, would also be the set of contacts for adjusting the resistor wiring arrangement. In the case of this one, there's just one resistor of 1 and then however many number of zeros it is for that particular decade, and then the other 4 are 2 and then however many number of zeros. Like it would be, like say for the 100,000 ohm decade, it'd be there's a 100,000 ohm resistor and then 4 200,000 ohm resistors, and so on and so forth. One arrangement like that for each decade, with of course the appropriate resistors for that decade. In this one, most of the resistors are these red 0.1% tolerance resistors. There are some 1% tolerance resistors for the 10 mega ohm scale and for the 1 ohm scale. I can't see any marks on the resistors for the 100 milliohm scale, but I'm guessing they're 1% tolerance, although at those levels, for anything other than really tiny stuff, it doesn't really matter all that much. And the switches are, of course, your typical thumb wheel switches. These particular units are made by Unimax, and of course domestically made. Hard to see that they're Unimax Switch USA. Whereas, again, a resistor box like this just has your fairly typical PCB mount slider switches, and sandwiched in between the legs of each switch are the resistors. These are, for the most part, I'm guessing they're either film or wire wound, at least on the lower levels. There are some precision film ones in the middle, or for the middle decades, and film resistors for the 1 million ohm scale. The last, for the 2 million ohm, the 3 million ohm, and the 4 million ohm, they are actual band marked, where the resistance is in the form of a series of colored bands, as opposed to many precision resistors, and even some of the higher power conventional tolerance resistors, which are text marked. Like those, you can see there's a text mark on each of them, and on the red resistors in this one, I can see the 0.1% on those. Really nice precision stuff, but then again, both of these are fairly high level boxes, although this one is of course nowhere near as precision as that one is. This is only 1% throughout the whole range, and actually this one is 5% from the in the single ohm scale. So but then again, for most things it's more than accurate, or more than adequate. And of course one of these is a lot cheaper, relatively speaking. Of these, or at least for the Taiwanese Ohmite, or no, X-Tech equivalent from Jameco, is $100 for one of these. That $539. So yeah, but of course this one is also a bit easier to use because you can set it to some arbitrary value, or you set it to whatever you want it to be, or whatever resistance you need it to be, and you just read it right off the scale. This one, requires a tiny amount of mental arithmetic, just summing up all the switches that you have flipped on, but then again, that's baby stuff, but then again, that's coming from a guy who can do integral calculus in his head. So, but anyways. So all in all, it's not too different from EEVblog's Teardown one. Although this one, there aren't the bodge wires that he's had, and the resistors are a bit different, but then again, this thing's about a quarter century old, so you'd expect a little bit of variation. But all in all, fairly good unit, especially if you can pick one up for the price I got this for, because this guy and this guy were part of a bunch of stuff that I got for free from somewhere that was throwing out a whole bunch of miscellaneous electronic equipment. So again, bottom feeding in this field has its place. Can save you a great deal of money. But so, yeah.